As I review speakers here on the channel, one question that I get every so often is how much power do I need to drive it? I don't have a big amp. Well, this is the Cambridge Audio AXA25. It is literally 25 watts per channel into 8 ohms. This speaker right here is the KEF Q150. It is an 8 ohm speaker, but it's only 86 dB efficient, which means it needs a bit of power to get it going. Now, it's not as efficient as, let's say, the speaker that I have right here. It's the Klipsch RP150 M. It's like 96 dB efficient into 8 ohms. So the higher the number, the more efficient the speaker is, which means you need less power. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about the AXA25 and just how it drives a demanding pair of speakers. All right, let's just jump into it. The AXA25 is an amplifier only. It doesn't have any processing built in, okay? So you will need an additional processor to make this work, to actually get sound to this box. I'm gonna start there. It also does not have any Bluetooth or a phono preamp built in. If you want a phono preamp, you need to jump up to the next level, which is the AXA35. It has a preamp built in. So I'll put links to both of these in the description below. But what this does have is a lot of really cool features and some features that I know some people are looking for. First of all, it has the beautiful Luna gray surface finish that Cambridge Audio is known for. This is a nice classic design. Up front, it has all the major controls that a lot of people want, including bass and treble controls. A lot of people ask, does the amplifier have bass and treble? This does. And I like it because it's got a little notch in the center there so you can see your plus, notch, then minus for your bass and your treble controls. I like that a lot. Next to that in the center is the big volume knob that you can turn up and down. And it's got a little bit of weight to it, so it's a little weighted. It's not free spinning, but it's not like the biggest weight ever to give you some resistance there, but it does feel really good when you turn that volume knob. And then next to that is balance control, so you can do left, center, right balance for your speakers if you want to change the balance for your speakers. There are 4 RCA inputs on the back that correspond to the selection right here, and there is an auxiliary input right here, so you can select that and do a 3.5mm auxiliary input and play some music from your phone or your tablet or something like that. Now let's move back over to this side of the player, and as you can see, the main power button is right here and it is white, but when I turn this on, you notice that the light is still white. It just gets a little bit brighter. And me personally, I wish the standby color and the power on color were different. So if the standby color was blue or red and the power on button was white, that's just a personal preference. But one thing you do notice here is there's no screen on the front of this. And that can be a plus or a minus depending on how you look at things. When you're watching a movie in the dark, it's nice not to have a screen. But if you're far away and you're trying to figure out which input you have selected, you won't be able to see that with a screen. The AXA35 does have a screen as well, so that's another difference between the two players. All right, so here we are around back, and as you can see, everything is laid out nice and clean. Right here is the main power connection, and then here in the center are the speaker connections, left and right. And remember, red with red to the speaker, and then black with black to the speaker. Next to that is the USB connection, and this is for USB power only. It's power delivery. You can't plug in a hard drive or anything like that and expect to get sound out of this. Remember, power only. Next to that is a rec out connection, and this is for like a CD recorder. You can't plug a subwoofer into this, only a CD recorder. And then next to that are the 4 RCA inputs, so you can connect like a processor, a CD player, a tape deck or something like that to this if you want. And it features the labeling that Cambridge Audio is known for. So you've got the labels under the different connections here, but they're also on top, so, and upside down, so if you're looking over the player, you can actually read them when you're looking from the top. I like that a lot. All right, let's answer the question from the beginning of the video. Can 25 watts per channel actually drive speakers that are difficult to drive like these Q150s? The short answer is yes, and it doesn't require all of the volume knob to do it. If you can see right here, I've got the volume knob set at about 50%. And this is where I sat down and I listened to music with these speakers, and I had a nice and pleasant experience. I could easily turn it up more and get more out of it, but I didn't really have to turn it up past 50% to get a pleasant experience. And that is key for something like this, because when you're concerned about, man, do I have enough power? The short answer is 25 watts per channel is enough power. If you were at 10 watts per channel, maybe not, but 25 should be enough. Well, 10 might work, but 25 is definitely enough to drive difficult to drive speakers. Now, like I said, these are nominally rated at 8 ohms, and that's what Cambridge Audio says this is rated for as well. I did try this with my Rendell Sound 1723 Monitor S speakers. Those are 4 ohm speakers, and they're like 88 dB efficient. It worked at the same 50% volume, but in the manual, Cambridge Audio says that speakers that are nominally rated at 4 ohms and 6 ohms will probably reduce the life of the AXA25. So you have to be careful with speakers that are like that. And quite frankly, they mainly recommend using 8 ohm speakers with this particular amplifier. And again, I had no issues.
Like two magnets, we are drawn to each other. You just know how to push all my buttons. Moved out of town and I erased your number. Like two magnets, we are drawn to each other. You just know how to push all my buttons. Moved out of town and I erased your number.
All right, now let's talk about the presentation. And like I said earlier, this plays the details in the highs, the mids, and the lows. It actually does a pretty good job with details. If you have more power, you get more bass detail for sure. But for 25 watts per channel, this can actually do a lot of details. One of these songs that I listened to was from the James Bond movie Skyfall, the title track Skyfall with Adele. And I like that movie because it's got a female voice on it, but you've got her voice kind of singing kind of low at first, and it's a little bit set back. Well, I found that this actually made the presentation just a little bit forward. And I also found there's a little bit of reverb in her voice at the high end, at the treble, in that sort of whisper that she's kind of got going on in that track. And I found that this will play the reverb, but it's not as clean, it's not as sharp as some other amplifiers that actually have a little bit more power. I compared this to the Topping LS90. I'm reviewing that, and I found that that actually played that reverb just a little bit better from her voice compared to this. Also, the Cambridge Audio Evo 150, again, played that reverb a little bit better than this with these speakers, okay? So it plays everything, but it's just not as detailed in a few areas, and it's just a little bit forward in its presentation overall. Now let's talk about dynamic range for a second. This has dynamic range, but it's not going to be nearly as much dynamic range when you're driving hard to drive speakers like these as 100 watts per channel or 150 watts per channel or 300 watts per channel, okay? You're just not going to get the same amount of dynamics, but you will notice the dynamics with this amplifier. You'll also notice that the soundstage opens up when it's supposed to open up. It's just not quite as wide or quite as big as a amplifier with more power. I also found that things are placed pretty much where they're supposed to be placed in a soundstage. Now, is it as clean and as clear as something that has more power? No, but it does do the job. And that's kind of what I found about this, is this really actually does a really good job overall with a lot of different speakers. I even tried the KEF R6 Metas because I've had this for a little bit. I tried the KEF R6 Metas with this and they worked as well, and I had a good time. Again, it's limited in power, so there's only so much you can get out of it. Can't get as much dynamics, but it does work. Now, one drawback that I did find with this is the signal to noise ratio isn't as good. I think it's like 85 dB or something like that. So when you crank the volume all the way up, you can hear just a little bit of hum coming out of your speakers if you put your ears close to them compared to some other amplifiers. But overall, I like the AXA25. This is a solid amplifier that I had a lot of fun listening to. It's not quite as dynamic as some other amplifiers with more power with difficult to drive speakers, but you can still have an enjoyable experience at even 50% volume, okay? So that is a definite plus. Now, I do wish it had a remote control, and I also wish that the power standby light was a different color than the power on light, just because it'd make it easier to understand. Now, if you have a turntable or you're planning to get a turntable, you will need to add a phono stage to this amplifier. But honestly, I recommend you just step up to the AXA35 because that'll give you an additional 10 watts per channel, but it also gives you the phono preamp built in, so you can just use that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely give us a like. And if you want to purchase this or anything else, use those links in the description below. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you next time.